All right. Let me flip to the right page. All right, I'll call to order this College Township Council regular meeting for Thursday, November 21st. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, do we have anybody wishing to speak for public open discussion for any items not on this evening's agenda? Anyone online or in person? Nope, okay. New agenda items is next. Does council wish to add any agenda items to this very light agenda for this evening? No. All right, moving on. Go right into reports. Manager's update.
Yes, sir. One moment, please. I'm not ready.
That was quick.
Yeah,
Usually
it
we
is
have a couple
quick. It
things
is quick.
beforehand.
Quick update relates to tonight's agenda item. The SBPA working group met on November 13th. We have another presentation tonight. Pam Adams from Center Regional Council of Governments is here to assist us in that. So that will be upcoming here momentarily. And the only other thing I wanted to mention here was that at the last meeting, council had approved the Keller Engineering estimate for engineering work related to the path to campus. And that now has, with your approval, has been forwarded back to Keller, who is now forwarding that on to PennDOT for their final authorizations. So we are engaged at this point with that project. So if there was any other questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them, but that's my report.
Okay. Any questions for the manager or comments?
None on our relatively short agenda.
Okay, we'll move on to COG Regional County and Liaison reports. We have a number of submitted written reports that are in the agenda. Does anyone wish to add to highlight anything they've written? Eric, you got anything else?
Nope.
I did not submit a written report, but we did have the CASIA on 12 November, and we did approve the at-door fee waiver policy, and that would be for disabled individuals, that way they don't have to pay the fee. And Pam, who could speak to this much more, gave an introduction of the Sustainable Communities Stewardship Network. That's more to come on this, but it's to help bring folks to education workshops, aid in events and participation, outreach, and extension of staff if necessary. So that's training folks in the community as volunteers and such. And that's all I had for that. Rich, you have anything else?
Yes, the finance met November 14th. The key point was our 2025 summary budget process debrief. Very good discussions with the goal towards getting a little bit better every year, and we provided a lot of feedback to staff and them to us, and it was a very good process for that. The one item of note is that the COG has been notified by the IRS that they ran afoul of filing of their 1099 non-employee compensation notices for the year 2022. With that comes potential penalties, but they've requested a waiver of that based on the circumstances which involved some staff changes and some deadline changes that didn't get communicated well. But so we'll see how successful they are with that. The IRS moves very slow, and that's we got an update on our various policies and procedures that we're updating, creating, and improving.
Okay. Anything else? Susan?
Public safety did not meet this month. Of note, with the CTIDA, the authority will be working with Prime Corps Properties, local developer, and submitting a grant to the DCED for a PA sites for work out at the Nittany Mall revitalization work. So CTIDA voted to support that grant and work with them on getting that grant. In addition, I attended the Alpha Fire Company demonstration of the electric fire truck. Pierce brought in the Volterra electric fire truck. It's actually a hybrid. They're touring it around the country now. There are 3 or 4 municipalities that are using it in different climates. The other local elected there was Matt Herndon, who's really the brains, the engineer brains. But what was interesting for me is that the truck has 0 emissions. So as the truck is backing into the station, there's no emissions being discharged into the station. So these trucks are actually being promoted to, support the health of the fire companies that take them. And we did get a little ride around. So yeah, very, very little brake work because the batteries regen and that's how they slow the vehicles. So that was pretty exciting. A lot of the different local companies were out to see that as well. So Bollesburg was there and there were some fire companies from out. In addition, Mike and I attended the Mount Nittany Community Health Needs Assessment presentation. So every 3 years, Mount Nittany does a community health needs assessment. And that is something they need to do to maintain their nonprofit tax status. So it's an ambitious look at the entire county, actually the catchment area. A lot of interesting information just from the first pass on the data. But what was really interesting is the community is asked to identify the priority health issues that they'd like the health system to address. And the second most important priority that they brought forward, the community brought forward, was affordable housing. So that is now considered a pressing health need. So mental health services and affordable housing were the 2 most important topics. So we'll be getting more information on that, and as we do, we'll share that.
Yeah, I forgot to mention too that Eric, myself, and Mike attended the Sustainable PA conference, or are attending. It ends and concludes tomorrow. So that attainable housing is actually a topic that was brought up today that our very own Center Region Ben Estelle gave a talk on. So very interesting.
And Mike Tilkus wasn't able to attend, but Ann Messner went in his place and reported back to him. So he's also interested in the work being done with the CHNA.
Okay. Anything else? Questions?
Just an alibi that on behalf of the township, I attended the groundbreaking for the new hotel on Shiloh Road on the 19th. Congratulations to Hospitality and Asset Management Company and the Maxwell family on a well-attended groundbreaking.
Did you go to Jersey Mike's afterwards?
I did not. The recently acquired Jersey Mike's, no.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay, moving on to staff, PC, and other committee reports. Does staff have anything before we get Matt up? No? Okay.
No.
Matt, and then Dave, did you want to report on your written at all? Did you want to speak to that after Matt?
Not unless you have a question.
Okay.
2 quick items. Tuesday night, we heard the Gold preliminary final subdivision plan. It's a replotting of 2 lots up on Oak Ridge Avenue. Right now, there's no development plans on those, and we did recommend that for approval. For the 5th time, I heard a discussion of the Crew 814 plan. A couple things came up. There's going to be quite a bit of a different slope with the walking path that's around the development, and we did talk about that. They were thinking maybe putting some signs up to notify the people. We talked about the mailboxes being outside. There's a gentleman from Burkentine here that said that basically the Postal Service likes the mailboxes outside. They really don't want to drag the mail inside. We talked about the CAD and where we're going to put a pad in and stuff like that. They're working with different agencies on that. Also the Fire and the Water Authority. Council of Governments is sort of working on the trash and recycling. They have a plan to use a private firm, and they were real happy about that. And we did talk a lot about the dumpster placement of the real large building. I guess the building's about 200 feet long, and maybe adding some more dumpsters and things like that. Anyone have any questions?
Well, I do, just to tie it into, I guess, to Mr. Schulte's report, right? So the Parks and Rec Committee had, it seems like indicates that the open land is not quite up to snuff. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, the open space. All right, I don't know if you guys had
I don't believe
Seen
we
that.
discussed.
okay.
By popular demand, it's holiday season, a lady was picking through the frozen turkeys at the grocery store, but she couldn't find one big enough for her family, so the meat department manager was walking by, and she asked him, "Do these turkeys get any bigger?" And he said, "No, ma'am, they're dead."
Interesting. Very interesting. Any other questions, comments? Okay, moving on to DEIB.
Nothing additional to report tonight, just acknowledge that next week's the Thanksgiving holiday, so happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Okay, now move on to this evening's consent agenda. Consent agenda consists of the following. CA1 is the approval of the minutes from November 7th, 2024 regular meeting. CA2 is correspondence, receipt, and approval of the following. A is an email from Andrew Schaefer from November 7th regarding example of balanced casino impact report. B is a letter from ELA Group dated November 4th regarding time extension for Mount Nittany Elementary School to March 3rd, 2025. And C is an email from Dan Materna dated November 10th regarding attorney accused of stealing due to gambling addiction. And D is an email from Dan Materna dated November 17th regarding Cat 4 mini casino information. And there are no CA3 items. Does anyone wish to pull any of the consent agenda? All right, hearing none, does anyone wish to make a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of approving this evening's consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, we have none opposed. All right, moving on then to old business number 1, which is the solar power purchase agreement.
All right, well, thank you, council, this evening. I'm going to just do a quick overview about the process, and I'm going to turn it over to Pam to give a presentation, kind of that broad overview of where we're at this evening and the documents that have been sent before you tonight. So, again, going back about 6 years at this point, this discussions on a joint power purchasing program focusing primarily on solar energy began locally. At that time, there were 15 member entities. Fast forward a number of years, this has obviously been a pretty complex process with a lot of starts and stops throughout it and a lot of detailed discussions. At this point, we have 10 member entities considering the PPA. And the final PPA documents, agreements are in front of us now for consideration. So we are nearing the finish line of this discussion here locally. At their most recent meeting on November 13th, the SPPA working group received an overview of the final PPA package of agreements and the process required for proper execution of the agreements by member entities. Given the complexity of what's in there, I asked that Pam be here tonight to provide an overview and really reserve this meeting for an opportunity for council to ask any additional questions. And then in terms of process, be kind of a two-step process at a future meeting, then come back for consideration of approval. So as noted, tonight you will have an opportunity to ask questions of Pam, ask questions of staff. One of the things that we have in the notes there in terms of review process is if you want to put this in front of the township solicitor again, that's certainly within your purview. And then the thought is at a future meeting, following review by council, and potentially by the solicitor, this would be added to at least one future agenda, either December or January of 2025 for consideration of approval. One of the notes that I put in my memo was given the relative small size of College Township's share of the PPA and the contractual agreements involved, it kind of behooves us to wait for some of the larger entities to sign on. State College Area School District was the first. They just did that at their most recent meeting. The next three in terms of shares are State College Borough Water Authority, State College Borough Proper, and Center County Government. But as far as tonight, I'm going to turn it over to Pam and let her walk through the presentation.
All right, thank you, Mike. So my name is Pam Adams. I'm the Sustainability Planner for the Center Region Council of Governments. And on the next slide, you'll just see what I'm going to talk about. I'll give a bit of an overview. I know most of you have heard about it, but if people are listening and watching, I like to make sure everybody has that same basic foundation of sort of how we got started. Talk about the document package again. There's a lot of detail in there, but I'll give an overview and be able to answer questions if you have them. And then focus in on the cost and rate projections. Sort of looking at graphs and numbers sometimes are a little easier than reading a whole contract document. So Mike said, we started this in 2019, so we've been working on this for a long time, but we actually started with 12 members and expanded it to 15 and are now between 10 and 11. But when the group was formed, you're working with multiple different entities. They had to agree on what the objective was. And that objective was to look for the lowest cost for alternative renewable energy. That was the focus, to see if that was possible. Let's explore if we can find renewable energy at or around the price that we're currently paying. For those entities that have renewable energy goals, clean energy goals, they would be able to purchase REC. So the REC portion, the renewable energy credit portion, is an option for those who want to meet their clean energy goals. So now I'll talk about the documents. So there are basically 5 contract documents related specifically to the PPA. And the first is with the solar developer, Prospect 14. They are the developer that is intending to build a solar project in Walker Township, and that contract that we have with them would be for 15 years, and it defines a fixed rate for the generation of that electricity with an escalator, 1.5. So it's a fixed escalated rate over the 15-year time period. Direct Energy, you'll have a contract with for 5 years, and we kept it at 5 years because we want to have the flexibility to bid it out, to be able to see what other prices we can get, and to learn from those first 5 years if there are things that we need to make adjustments on. The ability to get the solar electricity to us requires to have a master account on the wholesale grid. It's all sort of electric market speak, but they have that. So they will manage that electricity for us, and they'll actually manage all of your electricity. They'll look at what's in your PPA as well as what's not in it. And so they've defined that price, and that is included in our rate and cost projections. And then lastly, we've been working with Green Sky, that's the energy services consultant, since 2021, I think. We put that out for request for bid. And we've been working with them, and we want to continue to work with them because there's a lot of steps that need to happen that they are experts in and can help monitor and manage this PPA for us. That contract we are asking to be 6 years so that we have them to help us with the next process of whether, with the Direct Energy, we have the option to renew and just continue with them, but we need somebody that knows this process and can help us work through that process. So at the end of 6 years, the group at the time will be able to bid it out again, look for new proposals, and decide how they want to proceed. And then because this contract document is very complicated, if you want to say, and when I say complicated, PPAs have been around, they've been happening in our community, but we and our solicitors aren't familiar with that process. So the hiring of a solicitor, Phaser Drinker, that was specific knowledge on PPAs was part of that process also. So again, just a little recap as far as the process for you at your municipal operations is that currently you do your electricity contracts, and you can do it for 1 year, you could do it for 3 years. It's roughly generally about 3 years until recently when we've been trying to figure out this PPA. And at the end of that, you ask for the price again, and you go with what the market is telling you. But electricity contracts give you a better price than what you just get through West Penn Power. So that's how we've traditionally been doing it. You get an invoice once a month from West Penn Power, and all of your generation and distribution costs are together. In the future, we're going to have that fixed PPA rate that is going to come in through a direct energy invoice, because they're the ones managing this for the generation portion. So you'll get an invoice from direct energy, and then you will also get an invoice from West Penn Power for the distribution costs. So you'll get 2 instead of 1 in the future. On an annual basis, Green Sky, the energy services consultant for 2 years, 2025 and 2026, will bill you for their services as well. Once the PPA goes into operation, his cost, Green Sky's cost, will go into the kilowatt hours, because we want to include that as part of the electricity cost. So as I said, there's sort of these 5 basic documents for the PPA. You currently have a commodity master agreement and a transaction confirmation. That's part of your electricity contract, so you've seen those documents before. They will be also part of this package. The new documents are the 3 at the bottom. So the PPA master, that's with Prospect 14 down there in green. That is the document that defines how the solar project and our participation will work. And so you'll have your specific kilowatt hour portion of the solar project in that contract defined for the 15 years. The PPA servicing agreement, the orange one up there, is with Direct Energy. That agreement defines how this electricity is going to be managed by them. They define the energy rate calculation that will be used to determine the benefit or the cost for the solar project, which is sort of the difference, and I'll explain that in an invoice example. So they define that what they're going to be doing and their relationship with the PPA master. And then the last one is the in-scheduled tri-party agreement, where all 3 entities will sign. College Township would sign, Prospect 14, and Direct Energy, and that agreement is the simplest. It's 3 pages, and it's basically saying that you're all going to work together with these documents on this project. And we do have an executive summary, and I don't know if it was included in the agenda packet, but it is available that goes into a little bit more detail. So again, I'm happy to answer questions. So then another piece of that's a contract, as I mentioned, is the Green Sky Energy Servicing Consultant, and that information is in the packet also. And the purpose for this ongoing service is because there's work to be done to set up the PPA between Direct Energy and Prospect 14 and College Township, each entity, if you want to say. And we want somebody to monitor it that understands the process. And there's a monthly submittal of approval. When Direct Energy receives that, they own the electricity, and they have to get approval that we agree that that's what's happening. That will be something that Green Sky does. They will be able to provide reports to us. At this point with the solar group, we're thinking maybe quarterly in the beginning once it starts, so we understand what's happening, or more often as people need it. So he'll be looking at the charges, the generation, making sure things are working the way we've indicated, as well as the portion that's not in the PPA. He'll advise on that cost and how we should be managing that as well. So there's a cost for that, and that is included in the price. And so the idea is that we'll pay for that service. We've committed to and already paid for his services from 2021 to now. But if you proceed, then there'll be that cost for the next couple of years till the PPA's in the solar project is operational. So those are kind of the contract documents, but the actual process of how this closing is going to work. We worked with Betsy Dupuy, and she then coordinated this with the PPA solicitor, and there's a closing checklist. And basically that is just an outline of the different documents that are all tied together, and who is to sign them and what they mean. And so it's basically a review of what I'm kind of talking about tonight. There's a board resolution, and that is included in your packet so that you understand and read that. It defines the connection of all these documents, and if approved, it would give your manager the authority to sign the documents. And it pretty much then kicks off that these documents would be specified and made specific for you on your kilowatt hours, your correct entity name, making sure that it's specific to College Township, and that Adam would, it's kind of not one, the school district approved it, but they're not going to necessarily sign all the documents until maybe all 10 of us, or whatever amount once we know. So there's sort of a time period in between there with the board resolution approval and the signing of documents, but there's some work that needs to be done and information collected. So that kind of gets us to that approval process. The two documents on the right, one, I talked about the Green Sky Consulting, that's related to assisting us with this, but then the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, is important for the ongoing relationship of this new formed group. To this point, we've been the Solar Power Purchase Agreement Working Group that's gotten us to this point, but for going forward, we're going to be the Center County Solar Group, and this Memorandum of Understanding provides a history so that as we come and go, people will understand what has occurred and what this intent was, as well as it defines sort of these ongoing relationships on how often they should meet, who are the members that would be attending, what is the plan, how many months before the 5-year contract is up with Direct Energy, do we meet and start that process again? So that is the information that's in there. You might have heard or be familiar with the cable consortium that exists for the community, and this is kind of modeled after that. I assume the group will meet more often in the beginning, and once things get balanced out, there'll be an annual report, and Green Sky will help provide that data and answer people's questions. My little orange thing got moved around. This is the group that's currently in there. Harris Township is not, but is rediscussing it again, so I've kept them on the list because they'd like to be included in the information. This was what the numbers were for initial commitment. We're now looking at 3 different kind of buckets, if you want to say, 60%, 80%, and 90%. So some of us have to make some changes. For example, the school district was initially 79%. They have moved to 80% and have approved the PPA. But you can see College Township, there you're at 80%. So if you stay with that's an acceptable bucket, if you want to say. And your portion would be 306,000 kilowatt hours on an annual basis. And so you would be responsible for the next 15 years of always receiving and paying for that amount of kilowatt hours. That's the important thing to understand. If you're looking at major changes, shrinking your electricity, that amount is what you are required for the next 15 years to pay for. All right, so let's talk numbers. So first, we'll talk about projected costs. I think I was here earlier this year and talked about costs. So the first 2 columns, this is everybody's cost, but I've highlighted yours in orange. The consultant and legal has been paid or committed to be paid, and we're done with the PPA solicitor so that those costs are finalized for the first 2 columns. So that is the amount that you will be paying. If you decide to proceed, then you can look at the other several columns. So if you decide to proceed, the consultant's costs are defined there as $1,187. That's over a 2-year period until the solar project goes live. Our executive director suggested that, if you had this money and you put it in the bank from the time, and I think I calculated the net present value, basically. If you put the money in, because you're not going to see the savings until the end of, sometime in 2027, right? The year after it starts, you'll start seeing savings. So there's that value is what that net present value discount factor is. So including all of that is giving you a conservative cost estimate. But if you proceed, you also get, Prospect 14 is giving a reimbursement back of $60,000 by meeting the different milestones. So your total cost all in is 7,202. All right, so this chart then is taking the cost, but then looking at some information on projected rates and savings. And again, it shows everybody's, the ones that are highlighted in pink are ones that aren't currently in a bucket, and I'm estimating where I think they're gonna probably go to. But again, College Township, you're the ones highlighted in orange, so that cost is that 7,200 that I said from the previous slide. And based on 80% of your electricity going into the PPA, your rate is projected to be 7.3 year one and 8.5 in year 15. Now that's based on the market in 2026 being at 8 cents. And you need to have we need to identify what that market is going to look like. When we did this in the summer, or maybe even in September, COG was out looking at different contract rates, and we were getting rates at 8.9, 8.4. But now in October, the projections are for June of 2026 is 8.4, and this is without RECs. And then in December, it's 8.8. So I don't know what the market's going to be, but we thought 8 cents would be a conservative number based on the projections that we're hearing from not just our consultant, but I listened to Constellation, I'm talking to other places. Nobody knows what electricity is going to do, but there is a supply and demand issue. The AI and the data centers are really putting a stress on the grid, so there's supply and demand issues, and that usually means increasing prices. But 8 cents is what, you have to make some assumptions. So in year one, your savings would be $2,752. Annually, over the 15 years, it would be about $3,800. And total, if over the 15 years, is about $57,000, and your payback would be 2 to 3 years. If you go to the next slide, I'll show you it more in a graph form. So basically, again, it's that 8 cents with a 1.5% escalator. And I use that 1.5 escalator not because that's the same escalator we have, but it's because that's what history has been. If you look at the past 15, 20 years, that's the same increase. I will also add that 1.5 escalator that's included in the PPA was something we put in our request for proposal document because that's been the history. So that's why that does match a little. But year one, 7.3 to year 15, that's the escalator, that's the PPA rate. The orange line is the market projection. We know electricity goes up and down. If you've been paying attention to what your contract rates have been changing, they change. And during COVID, it was really high, and then it's really low. And that trend, so we're kind of looking at trend lines year to year that will happen. The orange band is kind of where we think electricity rates will be. I'm guessing some years they're going to be higher than that, and in fact, more years they're probably going to be higher than lower, but there's also the chance that it will definitely be lower. It's going to change from year to year, and the question is 7.3 in 2026 out to 15 years to 8.5, is that a reasonable rate for your electricity to give you that stability, to know that that's what your rate is, and to be producing and participating, I should say participating because you're not producing renewable energy. So that's the question for you to consider. I did go ahead and look at, let's say the market starts at 7.5 cents. So obviously that reduces your savings, and it basically cuts it in half, is what roughly that is, but this information is available and we can share the PowerPoint after if you don't have it. But again, that band might be sometimes right around the rate of market rate, right? So we predict it'll be around market rate or a savings, but I don't know what electricity rates are going to be. So for my last number slide, but if you want to kind of understand what an invoice is going to look like, basically, for your building, you have a monthly usage of kilowatt hours. We're going to convert that into megawatt hours down here below. But basically, you're going to get charged for what the market rate is. And that $60.50 is what the market rate is. So our PPA will go on the market, that electricity will go on the market, and if the market's at 60.5, that's great, because we're actually only gonna pay 45.9. So that savings is what sort of comes out in that energy rate, so that's a benefit to us, okay? If you hit the next click one, there'll be 3 things that come up on orange. The LMP is the locational margining pricing, that is solely the electricity. The 8-cent market rate includes the 60.5, the 17, and the 2.5. So that's the market rate that we would pay today in an electricity contract. So those things are all fees and costs that are included. That energy rate shows the benefit to us because our PPA rate is lower. We get the savings between there. That will be calculated based on the contract document on an annual basis. And there'll be a truing up each year if they underestimated or overestimated what they think the market rate and the benefits are going to be. And then there's the green sky fee there at the bottom. So those are the 2 new things. And the direct energy fee is in that energy rate also. So all the fees are in here. There's no additional fees. This is how your electricity bill will look in the future. That gives you in year 1 that 7.3, which is really 728. So the key takeaways from this is what we've talked about all along, is that this provides stability, budget stability. You get that information. It's kind of locking in low energy prices that are comparable to about what you have today, and you'll know that for budget purposes. It is projected to save money over the life of the project, and it does help diversify the grid in Pennsylvania, which will make our emissions for the state lower by adding renewable energy. So there's stability, savings, and sustainability. And so really the next steps are we are at the approval process, finally. And the first one, the school district did approve it on Monday, and that process will continue with the Borough Water Authority, county, and the State College Borough, I think, all looking at this in December for approval, because I'm doing their pre-meetings now, and we'll be looking at that. So basically, there will be information that I've been sharing with Adam and Mike that they'll need to fill out as far as making sure we've got the right account numbers and the entity name correct and stuff like that. So we'll be working on collecting that as we go, so we have that information, and then it'll be your choice in a future meeting to talk about approval.
Okay. Staff, anything to add?
No, Pam did a great job covering it.
Okay. All right, council questions, comments? Susan, you want to lead out?
I'll be honest, I don't have any questions. I'm still trying to put it all together, Pam. I think this is helpful. I appreciate it. And I know a lot of work has gone into it. And, you know, the takeaways are your last slide, that we're going to meet those climate action goals, and also we're going to get a projected savings. So I'll leave it to the numbers guys to ask the better questions.
Well, with that, that's a great segue over to the numbers guy, Rich. Any questions or comments?
Pam, what do you mean your crystal ball isn't good enough to be projecting electric rates in the, come on.
If I had that crystal ball,
Yeah, exactly, you wouldn't be working. Yeah, no, I mean, just trends. It's an upward trend, and it's generally higher than the 1.5 escalator and everything. So the potential of savings is great, but for most people budgeting, if you can tell me what my cost is gonna be in 15 years, that's a good budgeting tool. And electric rates haven't gone, significantly down. I think just as a point of reference, the West Penn Power price to compare is 10 or 11 cents a kilowatt hour right now. So, we're already beating that, but we would, because we shop it out. But
Correct.
Still, it's probably not going a lot lower than that. Some of the questions I had are more internal for College Township, but as far as yours, don't really have much else to say.
Yeah, I don't really have any questions, thank you. I think I'll be reading it a few times before we take some action on all the information provided. Eric?
Yeah, a couple. First of all, congrats on getting to the finish line.
We're,
Wherever we're at now.
we're like inches away, well, maybe feet, who knows? We're not miles anymore.
So what are you gonna do with your found time while you're at this?
Oh,
Just teasing. You don't
yes,
have to answer that.
I can't answer that, but yes, at a different
Who's
meeting.
we have a rep on the working group, right?
Like Bloom.
And anything,
No, I mean, obviously, it's a complex process. Appreciate Pam and other members of the project management team that have done a lot of the heavy lifting, quite honestly, on behalf of the working group. So, yeah, there's been a few lessons learned throughout the process, absolutely. But I think the product at this point, it is what it is. It's sound. It hits some key takeaways, as Pam referenced. So it's really, to this point, understanding the nuts and bolts.
and I don't disagree, but I do have a couple questions. The contracts that we will eventually be reviewing and executing, everyone has the same language?
Correct, everyone has the same language.
Okay. I heard Mike say that one of the reasons we're waiting to take action on this is to wait and see what the other partners do. Is it, I understand if somebody drops out, the sliver of our pie gets bigger and that would affect our overhead costs, but we're still doing 80%, so our kilowatt cost shouldn't change. But is it possible that there'll be some contractual language that one of the other partners will insist on that could have are we anticipating that? Is that another reason why we are waiting for others?
That certainly could be an option. So I know Betsy Dupuy's been involved, and she's spoken to several of the solicitors. I don't recall who your solicitor is, but
Glance.
okay, you mentioned having your solicitor look, and I think it came up at either the working group meeting or maybe in a project team meeting. But if your solicitor wants to talk to Betsy, she's happy to have that conversation, because she's been deeply involved with this since February and understands these documents. It is a potential, but it's really, these documents are not, we're not gonna change them. If somebody, and I think Mike mentioned sort of the big four, if you wanna say, and I was just at State College Borough Water Authority and they had no questions, so I don't, and I saw head shaking, so I don't know what the approval is gonna go there, but at this point, I'm feeling kind of positive, which is scary, about many of the big groups. And it's only scary because we might actually really get there. Is if one of the big four dropped out, that overhead for direct energy and the consultant could change the rates enough that maybe instead of 7.3, I haven't run all those numbers because there's a lot of numbers to
Okay,
run, but
so-
might be, you might have a rate of 7.35, or it could be 7 point, so that's the difference. But I'm anticipating not all 10 or 11 are gonna participate, but I don't know who's not going to and who is.
So that would be the factor. That's one of the bigger, that would affect our overhead slice more, or it could, beyond the overhead, it could also affect our kilowatt slice, our ongoing
Right.
operating kilowatt costs.
Yeah, obviously, the biggest concern would be that, as we alluded to, the big four, the other partners are all pretty small and quite frankly, don't move the needle much.
Yep.
So we want to see what the big four do, and then I think it's pretty clear. I believe, Pam, and you can probably speak to this, the school district can go it alone, because they're such a big piece of this and still have viability in terms of the PPA. But, as Pam has alluded to, sitting through the working groups, there's questions as to, is somebody going to fall out along the way? I can't speak for the big four. I don't really have an idea of where they stand. The school district has been pretty committed throughout, so it's not a surprise. The borough seems to be pretty committed. I'm not sure about the water authority. I haven't really got a good gauge on that. And the county seems to have been pretty committed throughout. So I don't have any real concerns. The water authority is probably my biggest question mark. But beyond that, once you get into the smaller ones, it's very small increments of potential change.
Okay. Just a comment, going back to something that Susan and Rich said, the takeaways, it was a great last slide. Because I mean, if I understand this, you know, we're paying West Penn for transmission, and we're paying whoever we're buying it for. We're just gonna take 80% of that and now commit that, you're gonna be buying 80% of it from somebody else at or below market rate for the next 15 years. And the additional one-time fees of the consultant and stuff, we'll get that back in 2 years if the projections are reasonably accurate. And then what Rich said, we went through this in our transition to CNG 25, 30 years ago. The predictability of being able to predict, having a stably priced, predictable fuel, in this case electricity, is really underrated value in budgeting from year to year. You know, we went to CNG for a lot of the obvious reasons, but behind the scenes with diesel and oil and all of that, and with CNG being domestic, and that's what we have going for us here. I understand, according to Ezra, that the construction of the solar array will be done here in the county with local labor, local workforce. So it has all those same benefits, and I think they're understated, and maybe should be highlighted as we work our way through the partners.
Yeah, I think you guys pointed out the stability piece, so that's why that one, you've educated me on how important that is. So we are intending to make sure people understand
No,
that.
Rich brought it up, and I'm just seconding it.
Yeah, at a previous meeting, you've indicated that to me. I'm pretty sure I'll give you guys the credit.
Yeah, I had one thing too. Pam, and on that note, on the predictability too, and correct me if I'm wrong here, right, but if we think about supply and demand, as more and more wind and solar comes onto the energy market, right, will that not drive the supply from fossil fuels even higher, right? If we think about it in that aspect, right, that's usually what happened with the market, and I think that's what they're predicting, right? Because now there's more supply from the wind side and the green infrastructure, so instead of prices going down, they'll actually go up from the fossil fuels. Yeah, go ahead.
Actually, California has shown in the model that it's actually lowered the prices for everybody.
Oh,
As
really?
more of the other sources come online, it's actually reduced the cost for everybody.
Oh.
That's the ultimate goal of what should happen, but the grid and the supply and demand, it takes a while to get to that balancing point, because right now there's a lot in the queue, you know, but yes, that's the idea, because these wind and solar renewable energy projects can provide that stable cost for everybody, right? So it can lower costs, and it should be able to lower everything depending on where the natural gas falls in, whether it's hydrogen or where that's headed.
So the one alibi question I had is, once we're all signed on and everything, it's kind of like the doors are locked, nobody else can join
Correct.
this PPA? Yeah, which is, you know, one downside, but,
Yes.
but as I understand about this developer, he's gonna have additional availability of capacity. He can build more capacity at this site that potentially others could get involved with.
Correct. I don't know what his specific plan is. Eventually, it'll come to Walker Township, and we'll get a better sense on what size the total array is. It could be that it's just this size. And again, I think he's kind of waiting, or the developer's waiting to see, are we really all in for the 20 megawatt, or is it less? If it's only the school district, then he's got excess.
Yeah, I have a little bit of insight into this one, because it actually is gonna come to the county planning
Yes,
commission.
yes.
Probably at their December meeting, and everything. But it's the third one in Walker
Yes.
Township, and the developer for this one already has one in the queue and everything, so they're pretty
Correct, right.
invested.
Yes, yes,
Invested
so
in local
there's
area.
definitely the opportunity, not for others to join this one, but to consider doing their own PPA.
We got a good set of docs, right?
We got a lot of good lessons learned, and yes, we're happy to share what we have learned and what we know.
I see some consulting business in the future.
Wow. Okay, anything else?
Not for Pam, but maybe for the township.
Yeah, questions, additional questions for
Well,
staff?
the question that's on my mind is we now have a set of 5 contract documents. And while we know Betsy Dupuy, who functions as county solicitor, the Ferguson Township solicitor, the Patton Township solicitor, and we know that Betsy has reviewed those and has been working hand in hand with the project management team and the attorney who drafted the documents. The question remains as to whether or not College Township Council would like our solicitor to either review those documents and/or to converse with Betsy relative to the set of agreements.
It's kind of why I was asking whether we thought any of the contract was going to substantially change. If not, then we could get that started tonight, right?
Which is, yeah, I mean, I think that would be an appropriate action.
If the answer is probably not,
Yeah, we do not envision any changes.
Okay, I mean, I'm on board with that.
Yeah, I think College Township has to have its own review of the documents. The question then may become, our solicitor in communication with Betsy, who's very vested in this, or is this similar to wireless communication facility where College Township needs a specialty counsel? I think we were already paying for one specialty counsel, so I think conceptually on the documents, Louis talking with Betsy probably could get the block checked.
Thoughts, Susan? Anything else? No?
Sounds
Yeah.
good.
I agree
Yep.
with what Rich said. I don't think we need
Okay.
this,
Anything else, Adam?
That's the only thing that came to mind immediately, but there may be other questions
Yeah,
administrative.
do you have some questions for the staff, Rich?
Well, well, one is for us, and then the other one, needless to say, the whole at-risk legal stuff has had a lot of publicity and everything. What is our I mean, if I recall from our last meeting, we said we were agreeable to paying our portion of that at-risk, and if I remember, the school district has already committed to paying its portion of it and everything. So it's really not at least for College Township, it's really not a subject.
Yeah, just to maybe reframe that, and it's gonna be a question to Pam here, which would be, based on your understanding at this point, of the 10 participants that we have some number of those said no?
No, and even Harris Township, who withdrew, said that they were gonna pay their share too. So nobody has indicated that they are not seeing value in having that solicitor. As I've pointed out, there could have been different and better communication. We believed we were informing, and the way that the process worked, the solicitor worked at risk in 2023, and we came in afterwards, and the same thing happened in 2024. But we didn't have meetings as often because we were waiting on the contract, so there were some gaps in the communication. But nobody has indicated that they are not paying. And
All right,
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
It's out there in the public, and so, just,
those are one of the lessons learned.
yeah.
If I may,
Yeah.
the only thing that I'm concerned about is ultimately the feet on the ground administration of all of this. It sounds as if we have planned for all the proper contingencies, but we haven't done this before, and anytime we add gears to what we do, I just, administratively, I get a little bit nervous. There's a lot of moving parts, and as long as we continue as a group to try to work through those, I think that we'll be fine. But I guess I just couldn't let it go without saying that I do have some reservations, but it's mostly about the mechanics of operationally how we do this on a day-to-day, month-to-month kind of a basis. That's all.
Every plan is perfect until it meets contact.
Yeah, I'll just speak to that a little bit. The county has a PPA, and they get their invoice, and again, it's just one entity, so they control it all, right? And the idea behind this is that we still probably have, until the solar project is actually producing, some more meetings to have. I envision it more quarterly, while we stay on the construction schedule and understand the process. But that at the municipal level, other than those quarterly meetings, having your rep go, you're gonna receive an invoice once the solar project is up. You'll receive two. And it will be pretty straightforward. There's gonna be the learning, and it's definitely, you know, when we have to, in 5 years from the 2026 time period, so 30, 31, I won't be here anymore. But the next person at the COG or at the school district, you know, that's when that will be time to go through it. And we might be really happy with direct energy and stay with it. And at the end of 15 years, we have 2 5-year extensions, and we'll learn as we go. It's definitely been a learning process. And so I do not want to say it's going to be easy, because we thought this would happen in 2 years. And now it's 5, 5.5, maybe 6.
We're not there yet.
Okay, thanks.
So, and I know the school district changed their resolution because this seemed very municipal authority to them, and I don't even think mentioned the school district, so they changed it minorly. But you'll get that copy of what they did. So,
Okay, thanks.
thank you.
Further discussion?
I was good, that point, even more so, to have Lewis involved,
Okay,
on that.
all right. Anyone else? Good, all right, so we have no new business items this evening. We do have some staff informatives for your information. And then council staff, other matters.
Well, yes, as a matter of fact, I do.
Oh, wait, Dawn had one first, right?
Oh, yes, tomorrow is the 149th anniversary of the founding of College Township.
There you go.
That's right, and the crowd went.
Berserk.
I almost woke up to that.
All right, thanks, Dawn.
So, Mr. Chair, I couldn't let the evening pass without pointing out that a little over 5 years ago, Jen Snyder assumed the position of executive assistant and assistant township secretary. And it is with regret but understanding that Jen's going to be leaving us, and this is her last meeting for all time here in College Township as an employee of College Township. And she will be heading off to Utah here. Jen's last day will be November 27th in the office, and she's going to be very much missed. So I just wanted to afford members of council the opportunity to join me in wishing Jen well, and bon voyage and best of luck in her new endeavors in Utah.
Hear, hear. Yeah.
And we do have a little something.
Oh my goodness, how did you all do this without me even knowing about it?
Not them.
Not as well.
Totally shocked.
Not as well.
Well, that's where I didn't know what you wanted to do.
Let's recognize everyone. Yeah, okay.
Thank you very much. It's just so bittersweet. I mean, I just told Mike, I'm so emotionally unstable at the moment, but I'm looking forward to my new adventure, but half my heart will stay here with you guys. And just thanks for everything.
All right, well, with
Well, we'll
that,
leave the door open.
yeah. With that, I'll accept a motion to adjourn the meeting.
keep it going.
We can't keep.
Wait a minute,
past
hey,
20
just
seconds.
turn it over to Eric, we'll go, we got this.
Yeah.
So moved.
All right, we're adjourned.
Wow, I'm
All right, now.